Hello there, Reason people, PoohBear here, and welcome to my channel. And today we're going to be looking at using CV devices with players and actually using the players to manipulate, say, the CV signal. I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's quite a simple thing to do. However, is it worth it? I'm not 100% sure on the modulation side of things. I haven't found a personal use for it. I was doing a number of things and I was thinking, oh, look at all these things I'm doing. And then when I actually stood back and looked at it, I thought, well, I can probably do that actually in the CV world and maybe even a little bit easier. But I was always getting some interesting results. However, using logic, because obviously there's two sides to CV, the modulation side and the logic side. And there's a particular player using logic is, well, I can't do it in normal CV world. So yeah, it's blinding. It's an absolute must. And I'm using it all the time. And I'll go through that as well. So let's very, very quickly set ourselves up a few little devices where we can actually start pushing CV signals through player devices. So the first thing I'm going to grab myself is a good old LFO. I'm just going to hold down the shift key when I create that. I think what we should do is actually have a look at some of the signals when they're coming in and out. I'm going to use the CV8X4 obviously as a bit of a generator, so we're going to need a signal. I'm going to use the ham unit itself. And that's what I'm going to actually, because this is an instrument, so obviously we can stack players on top of this, and this is how we can get our CV signal out quite easy. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to right click and I'm going to combine this one up. So before I actually even bother putting the player on this, what I'm going to do is just quickly wire a few things up. So let's actually get ourselves like a little signal going. So we've got something here. And I'm going to use a unipolar signal for the simple reason is when you actually start putting stuff via players and actually going through things, it's actually going to, if it's bipolar, it'll just chop it off. It'll just drop the negative off. So it won't be there and it'll actually flatline it. So if you had a nice sine wave go up and down, you just get the bump at the top and it won't ever go down. You just cut that right off. So let's actually have that signal going in, and then I'm going to take a note out and we're going to put this into our analyzer. Now at the moment, nothing will be happening. So even though this is actually running, we can see it's running, nothing's actually going to come through because to get a signal through all of this, we're going to need a gate information. And that's why I put my CV8X4 there. So all I'm going to do is just take a wire out of that and put that into the gate. And all we need is anything above 0. So it doesn't matter if you turn it up full or you just turn it up a little bit. So you can see straight away we are now starting to get our signal through. And let's just push an amplifier up so we get ourselves a bit of a bigger signal. And let's just speed it up a little bit. So great. So we've got ourselves a signal going through. So let's go and grab a player. Actually, to start with, let's just grab a box standard player, something like an echo note, and let's put that on. And as you can see straight away, it's starting to manipulate that signal quite a bit. Even sort of start changing around the pitches, we can obviously start dropping some of the echoes off. If I turn the gate off, just get rid of that browser. If I turn the gate off, I put this to 0, you can still see we're getting a little bit of information come through and then it stopped. The reason it's going to go through is obviously the echo note is still echoing away in the background. So if I turn this on and off, the echo note is still going to do a bit of job in the background. So yeah, you can sort of start seeing we are manipulating this sort of CV signal, but it's not doing anything brilliant. But as I say, I thought I'd just show this because obviously it's something easy to do. And you may be saying, oh, I need a particular signal doing a certain thing. And this, you never know, might meet your needs. But as I said, the best side of things, I think, to use players for is actually for logic. So let's actually jump straight in and actually have a look at that. As you can see, we've got a number of player devices we can actually choose from to go for. But obviously the one I am going to be using is Delta. Delta for logic is absolutely phenomenal. So I was going to delete that echo note out. So we're left with a good old Delta device. What I'm going to actually do is if I obviously disconnect that signal, we've got no signal going through. And some of these things will make sense, and some of these things in here are not going to make sense. So like the velocity stuff is not going to make sense because we're manipulating just the note side of the CV signal. But if you had a square going, I would obviously push that via the gate, and then some of these options will then actually come in quite handy to mess around with that kind of information, that square coming in. Because you've got to remember, gate is either open and close, and we've got to open it a little bit, hence why this has to be just above 0, so we can flow the note data through. And the other thing to remember, I did do that video on the CV signals, is even if we close the gate off, the note gate CV signal is going to stay wherever it was left. So it works like a bit of a sample and hold device as well. So you can do quite a lot of sample and hold with Delta, with note data coming in if you're starting to pulse the gate and stuff. But we'll have a look at some examples of what I'm actually talking about there. So some of these make perfect sense. Some make sense later down the line. I will be using the clock divider quite a bit. And in my latest and last probably 2 or 3 generative stuff I've done, I've actually used Delta, and I've been using the clock divider to really slow things down. And the big one in here really is the if switch. The if switch is so powerful, and it's something which has sort of been missing in Reason. Yes, there is that, like that DC voltage compare, but I found that's, you know, it kind of does its job, but it's also really, really limited. Whereas the if statement and in the functionality of Delta, it really, 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 really is flexible. And obviously in the generative devices, I've been using things like chart switches to either decide to let my CV signal through or not let it through, to turn things on and off. So there's a number of things in here which come in really handy. In the utilities, obviously the CV out, because obviously on the back of, oh, I'm so sorry, I've done a ping there, didn't I? On the back, as you can see, we've got 8 outputs. So we can obviously set so many different ifs up, and we can output to different outputs at the same time, different values, controlling multiple things. But just to start with, let's actually grab ourselves something like a simple note transpose, and let's go back to our FO over here, and let's just put it onto something like a triangle would do. Let's just put it through this one here. As you can see, here's our triangle, and it's got randomization on the triangle. The one nice thing, obviously, about this randomization is I can actually turn around and say, actually, no, I only want the randomization to go from 0 and upwards. So it'd be plus 12. Or I can have it so the signal is only going to be randomizing above the signal, or I can have it so it's randomizing below the signal, or if you've got these both set, it'll be randomizing above or below the signal. Whereas when you changes on something like this, you're not going to really notice too much difference. You might notice it's just a little bit more depth in it. Obviously, the more you actually turn these up, the bigger the depth is going to be between them. But at the end of the day, what you're looking at here, you could get the same kind of result just by simply putting yourself a random LFO on and just merging the signal further down the line. Just take the amplitude down, and you can end up with the same result. And this is why I refer to, well, when you start looking at some of these things, yeah, it's a little bit easier here and there to set up, but is it really worth it? As I say, the big difference is when we start getting ourselves into like the if statements. Actually going to pull up another device, which might actually be a good way of showing and demonstrating some stuff. Where's the good old CV select switch? Here's a good old CV select switch. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to take that and pump that into the CV select switch, and now we've got a triangle going. And as you can see, the triangle, I'm going to slow it right down. Obviously, as the triangle is going to go up, it's going to move the switches up. When it hits the top and comes down, it's going to move them down. Great. You could think of what we've got going on here quite simply as that LFO connected, say, to this knob here, and it'd be moving this knob up and down. So how many times have you grabbed an LFO, obviously plugged it into a backup device to do some modulation? However, how many times have you maybe thought about plugging it into a backup device and what it's actually cycling through is a particular options, and you think to yourself, yeah, I want that, I don't want that option, and I want that option, and I don't want that option, and I might want that option. You can't, with a normal LFO, you just can't do it because it's going to cycle around the whole lot and go back again. Now, there is a trick I used to do with the CV select switch, which will actually allow you to do that. So you actually set each of these signals up to each of the settings, obviously, on the device. And when you select, obviously, one of these, it's actually going to point to it. And you can obviously get it to skip certain parameters because you just have this one turned up higher. Now, that works quite well. However, you're in what I think of as a fixed zone. So when the LFO is over this particular point, we've got this one, and it's going at the same rate going through these zones. With the if statements within Delta, we can have variable size zones. So I can have a small zone. So when the LFO is in here, it's got this much amount. It's going to select whatever it's doing. Then on this one here, I can have a big zone. So it's going to spend a lot longer time. And this one here might be a real tiny zone. So it's going to be very, very quick. And a medium zone. So you can do flexible zones. So again, if you had something where you wish to cycle through, you may wish for it to linger longer on this particular option because you like the way it's affecting the sound or something, and so on and so forth. So let's set Delta up now to control the CV select switch, but we're going to control it in such a way that I'm going to take the same LFO and push it through Delta. I'm only going to get it to light up, say, lights 1, 2, 5, 6, and 8 or something. I don't know. We'll make it up as we go along. There's nothing new there for me making stuff up as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to obviously need is some if statements. And let me just duplicate these a few times. So we'll have a few of them. And I might even get rid of one of these if statements, to be perfectly honest, just to speed things up. Because obviously you can have more, you can have less. And the other thing I'm going to then need is my note. Now, as I was saying, this note really effectively, as you can see, we can control what value it's going to be between 0 and 1, which is obviously in the CV world between 0 and 1 volts, which is similar to the CV8X4 knob here. So wherever I'm setting that knob, it's really equivalent of me setting this the same. So it's a bit like having the CV select switch inside Delta, this little bit here. So we're going to need a few of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to have a fifth one, and I think I've got 5 there actually already. Just in case you're wondering, oh, why am I getting an extra one? Because obviously the top if statement, you see what I mean. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I always seem to wire it up this way around. So I'm going to have my first if statement, and this is going to be my very first zone. So I might bring this right down. This zone here, well, that might do. That one, 60, that's, well, actually, let's push that a little bit higher. And that one, we can go right up. So if it's above a value, we're going to go into our next if statement. It's above the value, we're going to go into our next if statement. It's above that value, we're going to go to our if statement. And this is why I've got myself an extra set note. So if we're above this one here, obviously I'm going to go off and set that note there. If not, I'm going to set that note there, that note there, that note there, and that note there. And obviously we need to output these as well. Whoops. Now obviously I could use the CV outs. So we don't actually even need to go via whatever device you've got down here, the Hanwood. I've got the Hanwood down here, so I will. Now I've got to dial these notes in to make sure they're going to hit the appropriate lights. And at the moment, as you can see, we've got ourselves an LFO going through, which will be very confusing to sort of dial this in. So we can do a little trick here. And this is the sort of trick I do a lot. When I'm dialing things in and doing things, I'm actually going to wire myself up a CVA-X4, and I'm now going to pretend to be this LFO running super, super slow. The next thing, what we're going to need, we need to take, we've got some, I can take it from the feed from here actually, and put that into my CV select switch. There we go, so it's all gone quiet, and it's paused itself on number 5. So where are we? Let's have a look. Should be this one here highlighted. And it's saying it's number 5 because obviously it's on 72 here. So I'm just going to dial this down. He says, so we should be on that one there. Yeah, there, here we go. So we're on number 1. So now I'm going to just push this up until I can see this flash. There we go. So I now know I'm on this note here. I need to just bring this down. Ideally, what I could do with is having a square just pulsing in here. There's number 2. I'm just going to push this up again so you can see it's flashing on the next one. There we go. Should be on this note here. And, oh, look, it's on number 5 already. That would do me. So I said I wanted it to jump to number 5. This one here, I was going to want it on number 6. Obviously, I need to just turn this up. Yeah, got number 6. And we're going to jump up to 8. So I know that's going to be virtually a full signal. So let's push that up. Just prove it. So as I pull this down, jumps to that, and it's going to jump straight down to 2 and jump down to 1. So straightforward. I'm going to now just take that original LFO, which, as I say, when it was plugged into here, you can see it's just whizzing up and down and highlighting absolutely everything. I'm going to make that in my CV in over here, and we're going to have this one plugged into this one over here. And so the LFO is running out, but as you can see, we're now switching between 1, 2, 5, 6, and 8. So any device you plugged into the back of now, you'll be obviously missing certain steps. And this is absolutely brilliant for doing this sort of thing. And I've actually got some working examples, what I've done. So let me just go and get my mouse over onto my other screen so I can put up a working example. In fact, I've got 2 working examples. Let's have a look at this one first. So in this particular working example, this is one of my Generative projects. Sorry, I was looking on the wrong screen then. I'm using the if statements, and as you can see, I've got multiple if statements, and I've actually, let me just hide that a little bit quickly. So there's my input, and that's actually splitting off to other if statements as well. But basically, all this is doing, and we've got some 3 outputs, is doing multiple things, these if statements, and that's what I love about using Delta. We can do multiple things. We're not just restricted to this like single little path. And depending on, and I've got a random LFO at the top coming into this, depending what the value is, it's either going to turn this beat map on or off. If it turns this beat map off, it's going to select a different pattern. If the beat map's on, it knows it's on, and it selects yet another pattern. And there's also an option to turn this beat map off. And if it's a special, and as you can see, this is what I refer to as my zones. This is a very small zone, so it's looking for anything above 115, so from 115 to 127 in a random field, which is very, very tiny, because you can imagine the rest is all down here. It can randomize into, I've got this little gap at the top. And when it does that, it's turning that off, it's putting onto pattern number 3, and it's actually sending the signal down the chain here, which actually turns off loads of other instruments. So it ends up having a little bit of a solo of some drums and a bass just running. And that's what this was doing. And this was obviously a Generative piece I've got running because all my drums and everything on this particular piece were being driven by total randomization. And obviously the wiring on the back is quite, I say quite straightforward. It comes down to what you're doing. As you can see, this is the important bit. What have I got coming in here? So in here is coming from a random LFO coming in. There's my CV8X4, which I'm using as my gate data again to turn everything on, to let everything flow through. Got one bit of CV coming down, going through a spider, going through a janitor, just to smooth the signal coming out of it. And then I'm turning the volume down, totally down actually, on this particular mix channel. And as I say, then we've got the other outs which are coming out. In fact, one's going up to an analyzer, which is being split, going into here, which is either turning the beat map on and off. And where's the other one going? It's now going down to this particular one, which, all right, so we've got ourselves another gate. So it's doing another little bit of logic here, saying gain or no gain. So it's actually doing some, I've got some other logic later on in the program, again, which is correcting the volume. So it's turning that volume up and down as well. And that's all being driven really, from these simple if statements to work out, should we do this or shouldn't we do this? Really, really, really powerful stuff. I've got another example where I'm actually using, would be this one here, won't it? Where I'm using clock dividers. Obviously, I've got a little chart switch going on in here. I've got multiple outputs going on. And in this one, I've got all, oh, damn, I'm clicking on the wrong screen. Sorry. I've got all these if statements, and this is really what we set up very similar to what we set up at the beginning. And the only difference is what these actual if statements are actually doing is they are actually choosing my scales, because I only wanted certain scales. I think it jumped from like custom down to, I can't remember, minor. Then I jumped down again to some other scales further down here, but I was only selecting a few scales. And that is really what that is doing there. I don't know if I can speed this one up. Oh, it's all a little bit funny. I've ripped loads of it out because my DSP is quite high when I have everything running. So that I found really, really useful, as I say, for controlling the scales. I've got a pulse floating around the system, what is changing my chords to this generative piece. But then I had this other clock divider. And what this clock divider has that the PSQ doesn't have, because obviously this is quite a powerful device, I might even write to the dev. It's got this simple little option here, suppress lower divisions, and it really is quite powerful. So as you can see, I've got some divisions of 5 and 7 coming in here. So every 5 pulses, I'm actually going to obviously run whatever I've got going off on this particular one here. I couldn't actually tell you off the top of my head without probably going through and seeing what it's actually doing. There's a good chance, I've got a feeling that one is changing a bank of sounds. And then on every 7, it's going to change a totally different set of bank of sounds. And then I've got it obviously going off into the sequential switch, which is only running equivalent to every 14, because there's 2 there, so they double it up. And that was doing my changing my chords. But because this is division of 5 and this is division of 7, every 35 cycles they're going to be falling on the same time. And I didn't want to change these sounds and these sounds at the same time. And having this option turned on meant, well, the 5 won't be honoured, so this wouldn't be fired off, and only this one will be fired off, and this one won't be fired off, and the next time it goes round, 5 things. So really, really quite powerful stuff. I know this might be sounding a bit confusing what I'm talking about here, and actually this sort of stuff I am going to be talking very, very heavily, because I've just released my new, it's already up on my YouTube to do with my new generative piece. I haven't released it everywhere else just yet. You might be watching this, and I already have done, which is going to be released very soon. Maybe I shouldn't just say that. It's very confusing, doesn't it, when you do things and then they release them and then don't release them. So yeah, so this is, there's a lot of stuff going on in here. And again, I'm using a chart switch to work out, am I going to send a pulse through or not? I am going to delay the pulse, or I'm just going to send it through raw. And this was an interesting one, because this particular pulse switch was coming down, was actually going off and firing off some other data before this logic had totally finished. So having this delay in it allows this logic to finish, and then it will come in. But I found, well, actually, it's nice to allow this to go through before this logic had finished, because I got a slightly different result. And yeah, so this is obviously playing around with CV and experimentation. But, Delta, I know I keep going on about Delta. Maybe I should do 101 things you can do with Delta. It is so powerful. And here we are now in the CV world, and using Delta yet again at a really, really quite technical level, really, of what we're up to, and a very powerful level. Because, as I said, there isn't other rack extensions than that which will do what we can do in here, and really, really easy in here. The manipulations of them if statements and that, and the way this is obviously modular and you can bolt it together, it really is such a powerful thing. I should be on commission. That's what I should be on. But no, but seriously, it is outstanding. And so, as I said, using CV for modulation, the boat's out, because I haven't found a use for it. I'm not going to say to people, don't try it. Do try it. You could find you get some nice results, and I'd love to hear back, what you are doing with it. And then, as I say, from the logic side, that's where I've really found the players, or more importantly, the Delta player, definitely really, really powerful. Without a doubt, there'll be some other players where you can obviously start manipulating the CV signal. But again, the great thing is, even if I had other players on top of this and it fed into Delta, at least I can actually start sending things off to multiple different outputs because I can split it inside Delta. So in conjunction with other things, you can have some fun. There's nothing wrong in, say, using this cellular note view above it and start transposing things. That means I'm taking my CV signal and I'm transposing it up or transposing it down, which I do. Again, in my last Generative project, I said I could be using a Janitor to offset my signal, or I can just use this because I'm now in the player world. Anyway, starting to waffle, as I usually do. Bit of a different one, this video, I think. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you have got something out of it. And thank you for watching, and bye for now.